Hello and welcome to Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I'm your host, Karen Seltz. Super excited that you're here with me on this very special episode. I'm going to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is meditation. And I have been on a meditation journey for, I would say, about 15 years, off and on. And things just seem to go way better in my life. Let's just say that when I am engaging in a daily meditation practice. So I want to start with a couple basics, like what is meditation? Now, the definition of meditation is to become familiar with. It's not what most of us as Americans think, to become familiar with. So we are becoming familiar with what? With our highest selves, with our true identity. And a lot of yoga practices talk about your true identity, my true identity. And like namaste, like my highest self bows to your highest self, right? Namaste. I honor you. I see you. I see the light in you. The light in me acknowledges and bows to the light in you. So it's all kind of saying the same thing differently. Now, when I first heard about meditation, I definitely considered myself to have ADD with the H, ADHD with the hyperactivity. And I thought there's no way I can sit still and clear my head. That's just ridiculous. And I thought that's what meditation was. So I'm here to dispel that myth for you. There are so many different kinds of meditation. And if you have a busy mind, I would love to share with you some of the things that have worked for me. The first one that I really did that worked very well for me with the busy mind was to take out a journal or a piece of paper and just do a mind dump. And I just like write and vomit on the page until I was empty, until there were no more thoughts like intruding. And I had a little bit of space. And then what I would do is I would think about, okay, what do I really want to know? What do I want guidance on? And I would ask, and I would say like, Holy Spirit, what would you have me do about blank? Or you could say God or Jesus or Buddha or Kuan Yin, whoever, highest self, whatever you want to refer to it as, it doesn't matter. It's all energy. So then I would just simply wait for an answer. I'd write the question and then I would wait for an answer. And if I did a good job of doing the mind dump ahead of time, like blah, the answers will come quickly. And it's really fascinating because I'm very auditory. So I would hear a voice and it would be my voice in my head, but it wouldn't be the quality of my voice. It would be very loving and gentle and parental, but not in an authoritarian way, in a loving way. Like, I love you no matter what. There would be no shoulds, no ought tos, nothing like that. No have tos, of course, but just like gentle guidance. Like maybe you need do nothing or take a step. Listen to your body. How does your body feel when you take a step right? How does your body feel when you take a step left? And just really getting in tune with how everything feels. Because I believe, at least in the United States, we are trained as children to ignore our bodies. I believe our bodies are our greatest indicators of what is true for us, what is right for us in the moment, and we are trained to not listen to them. No, you give Uncle Henry a hug, or you say thank you, or you say you're sorry. That's a big one. And when you're not sorry. So, and I was having a conversation with my daughters about this, about some kids in our neighborhood that their parents would say, did you do this? And if they said yes, they would get hit. So their kids started lying. Well, of course they did. If they were punished, if they were hit for telling the truth, what are the parents teaching them? They're teaching them that it's not safe to tell the truth, that you have to lie. So it's coming back home to yourself. What is true for you? And it's just really getting quiet and listening. And I do a lot of teaching on the ego. And by the ego, I mean the spiritual ego. And it's the voice that wants you to feel separate. And the ego speaks first and speaks loudest. So when you first start writing and the voice is screaming at you, that is the voice of the ego. It will scream and it's very convincing. And when you start getting wise to what it sounds like, it switches tactics. So just be careful. If there's anything that's fear based or lack or anger, those are all derivatives of fear, that just know that's coming from the ego. Your highest self, God, universe, spirit is only loving. Only loving. That's it. So is it love or is it fear? Those are the questions you can ask when you're trying to decide, is it coming from the ego or is it coming from source, from God, from my highest self? So hopefully that's a good foundation. And I wanted to share with you that I've had my greatest mystical experiences in meditation while I had my eyes open, while I was walking. So many of you, if you've been following me a little bit, know that I follow the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And by follow, I mean I am a doer of his work. I do his meditations every single day, sometimes many times a day, depending on what's happening. And at my very first week-long advanced retreat, I was doing a walking meditation. And with my eyes open on the beach, I had what many people would call a near-death experience. Now, I wasn't dying, I wasn't in danger at all, but my entire life flashed before my eyes in an instant. And I saw all the choices I had made up until that point. So boom, 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 boom. All those choices that I was carrying shame and guilt and judgment about, everything, that I thought made me unlovable. And in an instant, I went, oh, I get it. I see now. It all makes sense because it led me to this point. It led me to the point where I was willing to do the work and I was able to love and accept other people. I just hadn't gotten there for myself yet. But in that instant, my heart just went, it cracked wide open. It swelled. And I filled with so much love and admiration for myself. And in that same moment, I felt my oneness with God, the universe, source, with the sky, the birds, the trees, the ocean, every single other person. And there were 1,000 of us walking on the beach that day. And I just felt my oneness. And it was the very first time I ever experienced that, like complete self-love, complete acceptance of everything that I had ever done, everything I had ever thought, everything I had ever been, at least, what I thought up until then. And it was such a beautiful moment that I will never, ever forget. And I wasn't sitting with my eyes closed going, om, om. Now you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying there are so many ways to meditate. And I never in a million years thought I would have a mystical experience with my eyes open walking. It just didn't cross my mind that was a possibility. But I was new to the quantum at that point, newer. And I thought, why not share that with you to spark some inspiration? Now, there are apps that I use as well. For many, many years, I've used an app that's free called Insight, INSIGHT timer. You can pay if you want to. I do, because I like to support people. But you get lots of different types of meditations. There are different sounds only. There are guided meditations. There's a timer function which has different sounds. So you get to choose and you can play with it. There's also courses on there that you can access that are really, really helpful if you're just starting out. And I highly, highly recommend that you get on an app or something like that. Or you can just dive right in to some Dr. Joe Dispenza, because he's where it's at. And for me, he takes you from beginner, novice to expert in very little time. Like there's no difference when you're at a retreat. There's no difference between the person that's there for the first time and the person that's at their 13th retreat. There's really no difference. The energy in the room is available to everybody. We all have access to our higher consciousness right now. What are you waiting for? Right now, you can access it. So play. And Dr. Joe teaches this breath that liberates energy, and it takes it from the lower chakras or energy centers that are procreation, digestion, elimination, and brings it up to the heart where you can experience true creativity, unconditional love, to your throat chakra where you can express that love in a unique way, and to your higher consciousness where you can connect and commune with God, your higher self, with spirit, with all kinds of different beings and different realms, depending on what your beliefs are. I mean, just be open to it. Be open, right? Why not? Why not? What else are we doing? And you can have access to that. You can have access to everything. I also want to share that I've been studying this book called The Way of Mastery, and you can find it on Shanti Christo Foundation or Shanti Christo dot something. Just look up Shanti Christo or The Way of Mastery and you'll find it. And this book is so beautiful. The moment I read it, I'm like, oh, it just like hit me like this is true. And this is true. And this is true. And there are these little exercises in there that compound. And the first one, the first meditation in there is called 5 minutes as Christ. And you sit every day in meditation for 5 minutes as Christ. Oh my gosh, that's so shocking. But what does that mean? That means if you were the Christ, if you were God, what would you do? What would you do? How would you walk? What miracles would you perform? Who would you be? Like what would your characteristics be? What would your way of being be? Like who would you heal? Like what would you create? I mean, everything is possible. And it reminded me of my last week-long advanced retreat where we just started playing. And I did this. Like this is what we do when we do coherence healing. So at these retreats, there are bodies and then there are healers around them, and they rub their hands together, they connect, they open their hearts, and they send coherent healing energy to the person that's lying down. I happen to be one of the people lying down this time. The time before, I was one of the healers. And here's the beautiful thing about that. You don't need to know what's wrong with somebody, what they're reporting, because that's not true. It's an illusion. And I don't want to minimize. If you're going through something, of course, you get to feel it, you get to experience it. But know that the truth of who you are is whole and complete and healthy. And when you can connect to that reality, you will bring it into your body. You just will. And I've experienced it. So I'm not a talking head. I have experienced it a number of times. So when you take that energy and you rub your hands together and you do this, the energy, it knows no bounds. So you could heal somebody across the world. And it's interesting, not knowing anything about Reiki. I still don't know anything about Reiki, except it's energy healing. Not knowing anything about the universe, not knowing anything about energy. Intuitively, many years ago when I was married, my ex-husband had bone cancer in his femur, in his leg, the upper leg bone, and he had it removed, like 4 inches of his femur removed. And they put cadaver bone in there, and the bottom part of the graft was not growing together. And they were going to have to do another surgery. And somehow, I don't know how, I just knew. I'm like, okay, so I went, I didn't even meditate at the time. I just did this and I like visualized it growing together, and I put my hand over his leg and I just knew. I knew it was done. I knew it. And when he got x-rayed a few weeks later, it had grown together, and it had been 6 months or something of not growing together. So you can't really negate that. Like, what else? How could you explain it? You just can't. And when my kids were little, I would do that thing. I'd rub my hands together, and just if they had cut themselves or fallen down and bruised themselves or had a headache, I would just and they would be well instantly. And that is what you get to tap into. That's just one of the things. What I've been working on is creating my future self, which is so much fun. And there's a meditation that Dr. Joe does. It's called Tuning Into New Potentials. And he has you ahead of time select 2 different scenarios that you want to experience in your near future. And how will you feel when that happens? What will be present? How will you know it's happening? You know, gets to be measurable. How will you know it's happening? And what will you feel? And then you experience it. You play the movie in your mind ahead of time, because your mind doesn't know the difference between what it sees out here and what goes on in here. It's the same. It's the same. So when you can get yourself into that place where you create your reality by thinking of thought, what thought do you want to think? So whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It could be $1 million in your bank account. I'll just take that as an example. All right, when that happens, when you see that $1 million in your bank account, what will you feel? How will you feel? Oh my gosh, grateful, of course, excited, free, I don't know, energized, all kinds of things, right? You'll want to share it. Maybe you'll want to give to your favorite charity and say, oh, I've been wanting to give you this. I want to build a well in Africa, like whatever it is you want to do with it. Maybe you want to buy your parents a retirement home or whatever. It doesn't matter. How will you feel when you do that? So when you can think the thought, Dr. Joe says that's like the radio antenna that's like sending the signal out to the quantum. And when you feel the emotions ahead of the event, you are drawing that event to you. You are becoming the magnet. And you create this electromagnetic field around you where it just gets to occur. It will occur. It's just a matter of time. And when you're in the quantum, time gets really condensed. You're like, you shorten it. So it's super fun to play with. So I highly invite you, I recommend that you play with it. Play. What do you want to create? What are some of the other myths about meditation? Oh, you have to clear your head. You have to have no thoughts or else you're not doing it right. That used to be mine. And I once heard this meditation. It was a guy on Insight Timer, and he was doing this counting the breaths meditation. So he would breathe in and breathe out. And at the end of every breath cycle, which was an inhale and an exhale, there'd be a little pause there. And then you'd say 1, and then you breathe in and out again, 2. And you keep doing that until you get to 10, then you start over. And that's a really good way to kind of clear the mind. When I start thinking now, I do Dr. Joe's breath, where I'm bringing the breath up with my consciousness. I'm bringing it up. And as I do that, I'm contracting and squeezing and holding all the energy centers below that. So I'm contracting 1, 2, 3, 4, up, and bringing the energy up to my brain. That breath anesthetizes the analytical mind. It makes it go like become a mush ball, a marshmallow, which makes it available to you to become pure consciousness and to create whatever you want to create. So when I find myself thinking during a meditation, I will do that breath a lot of times. Before I knew the breath, there are different things. You can have a mantra or a word. Maybe it's Om, or maybe it's love. I mean, it could be any word. It doesn't really matter. As long as you have a good association with that word, it feels good to you. And when you catch yourself thinking, just repeat silently your word in your head. Om, or love, or whatever it is. The other thing is just label it, thinking, and move on without judging it. That's where we get caught up as humans when we're just starting, or even advanced meditators sometimes do that. They start thinking, well, I should be further along, or there's all the stories that come in. But if you just say thinking, okay, and just let it go, it passes. And when you have those little spaces in there, you are what? You're not thinking. And that's, for me, that's one of the main points, is to shut off the analytical mind and tune into my heart and into my body. Like, okay, what am I feeling? What am I sensing? And then more advanced is to get disidentify from your senses at all. So being pure consciousness is sensing. You're sensing things, and you don't see because like for me, I have my eye shades on, so I don't see. I have earphones in. I'm listening to something, music or Dr. Joe or something else. So the hearing is very specific. It's very specific to what my intention is. So that's really helpful. And then just all your senses get turned down. And one of the things that Dr. Joe does is he has you concentrate on sensing, notice the space behind your chest, so your heart essentially. And then that's called a convergent focus, no, divergent. And then I'll have you focus on the space around your heart, so way out there. So you're going from like a little point to opening your focus, narrow focus, wide focus. And that also relaxes the mind. It also takes your heart and puts it into coherence. And when your heart is in coherence, everything is possible. Everything that you dream of is possible. And if you think about this, if you don't believe in this stuff, it's all measurable. It's 100% measurable. There's tons of research on it. Check it out. Heart math popularized the notion of heart coherence. So check that out. But I remember one time when my youngest daughter was born, she was in the NICU for a while, and I had the curtain around us, and I felt like this energy. And it was this one person that worked at the hospital, and she happened to be the social worker. And my heart would just go, ugh. It would like contract and feel icky anytime she was around. And I remember not knowing what this was. So I would peek and it would be her. Every single time I would feel that in my heart, it would be this particular woman. I'm like, this is so weird. And then I realized that I could feel other people's emotions if I allowed it, if I just opened up. I could tell you what anybody was feeling at any time. I couldn't tell you what they were thinking, but I could tell you what they were feeling. And I believe that's available to all of us. I believe we can also tell what people are thinking, which was, it's also an exercise in the way of mastery. It's like practice. When you're at a stoplight, just practice. Look over the person next to you and what are they thinking? What are they experiencing? What are they feeling? And just practice. And you don't have to take it on. That's what a lot of people that are empaths take on other people's energy and they hold it and they store it and they're stressed out and they get depressed a lot, anxious a lot, and it's not really their energy. So I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just saying, just notice it. And then when you get to the next stoplight, you're going to notice someone else's energy, right? And just play with it, have fun. If you're at the supermarket, if you feel like some heavy energy, what would it be like to open your heart and to send that person some love and compassion? Say, gosh, I wonder what they're going through, that their energy's that heavy. Sometimes I think, wow, people, that person must have had some major circumstances to feel that heavy right now. Or, who knows? Maybe their wife's in the hospital dying. Like, who knows, right? Like, there's always room for more love and more compassion. And it starts with us. And for me, I believe it starts with love and compassion for ourselves without judging any part of ourselves. And meditation helps you to get to that space where you can love everything and not reject any part of you because it's all the same. It's all part of you. It's all welcome. It's all beautiful. I want to share with you one of the meditations that had a profound impact on my life. And it also comes from the way of mastery. And it is simply this: for 5 minutes a day, as you inhale in your head, you say, I accept. And as you exhale, the love of God, the love of Christ, the love of Buddha, the love of the universe, whatever you choose, I accept the love of God. I accept the love of God. And what that did for me, I realized that I didn't feel worthy of God's love. So I wasn't praying. I was like hiding. I was hiding from God because I was very active in my addiction at that time. And I didn't feel like I was lovable. I didn't feel, especially by God. I thought there's no way God could love me with what I'm doing. And I was thinking that God was this, storybook God. and not the God that I've come to know as pure love, who doesn't see sin, that sees me as precious and whole and complete and wants me to be happy. And once I got that God loved me, no matter what I did, no matter what I did, I didn't have to earn it. Then my heart started to open to love for myself. I started to see myself as lovable. And that is no small feat. You know, if you knew what I was doing before, I didn't feel very lovable. I didn't feel very worthy of God's love. But once I got that God loved me, I got that I was lovable. And then I was able to accept it from myself, give it to myself, and then receive it from other people outside of me. Like, wow, it is possible for human beings to love me, even though I'm not perfect. And it was so beautiful and so freeing. And it was the difference between my childhood of being a human doing and my adulthood of transitioning into a human being where I was lovable just because. And once I got that, I was able to give it. And I will say this, I do have a huge capacity to love. I don't think there's anything that's unlovable that you've ever done. Anything you've ever thought about yourself that's unlovable. Anything you've thought about someone else that's unlovable. I think, no, I know you are lovable no matter what, no matter what. And I love to share that with people and to hold space for them because I love myself. And that came through meditation. I never would have gotten to this place without meditation. So I invite you to start something. Start something. Walk for 5 minutes a day in trance, where you don't really look around, you don't make eye contact. If there are people around, you're just in trance and you are focusing on your future self. Who am I becoming? What future am I walking into? And the beauty with walking meditations is you are getting it into your body. You are embodying the new you. So if you are playful, you might be running around and playing and jumping and doing cartwheels. I don't know, skipping. I love skipping. You might be walking with your chest out because you're proud of who you've become, what you have overcome to become who you've become. You might be grateful to God. You might have your arms out, but you are embodying that. Your heart is open. You're walking as a confident, strong, courageous, powerful being because that's who you are. It's the truth of who you are. Whereas if you're sitting and you have some stuck emotions, they might stay there. They might stay stuck. So if you've tried meditating and you're like, oh, it's not for me, go on the treadmill, go outside and walk and meditate and think about, what you love about yourself, what you love about life, what you would love to create for yourself, for your family, for the world, what impact you're called to have, and go out and freaking create it, but create it now. So create your future now, live it now, be grateful for it now, because that's the only moment that matters. Now is the new later. My boyfriend said that to me today. He said, Dr. Joe says this. I'm like, I've never heard that. I love it. Now is the new later. I think that's hilarious because how many times have we said, I'll do that later and never do it? So do it now. Be it now. Be grateful for it now and create it. Draw it to you because it's worth it. It is 100% worth it. And you are worth it. You. There's nobody else like you in the whole world. And you were created for a very specific purpose. And when you don't live that purpose, there's parts that just will not be happy, most of the parts. You might be surface level happy, but you won't experience peace and joy and meaning and contribution and worthiness at the level that you were meant to. So walk into it with courage. Walk into your future now. That is my call to action. Walk into your future now. Who do you choose to be right now? Thank you so much for watching another episode of Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I'll see you right here next week. Mwah!